صلوات على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجه.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Inna anzalnahu fi laylatil qadar. Wa ma adraka ma laylatul qadar. Laylatul qadri khayrun min alfi shahr. Nazzalul malaikatu war-ruhu fiha bi'izni rabbihim min kulli amr. Salam hiya hatta matla'il fajr.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل
محمد وعجل فرجه والعناته.
محمد وآل محمد صلوات.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Baba uko wapi baba? Baba uko wapi baba? Baba uko wapi baba? Baba uko wapi baba? Wanasema nimekuwa yatima, moyo yangu inauma. Wanasema nimekuwa yatima, moyo yangu inauma. Niko peke yangu baba. Baba uko wapi baba? Baba uko wapi baba? Baba uko wapi baba? Wamevunja na kuunguza mahema, watoto wanalia baba, wamevunja na kuunguza mahema, watoto wanalia baba, baba sikuoni baba, baba uko wapi baba, baba uko wapi baba, baba uko wapi baba, wamenipiga na kuunguza nguo yangu, na kujeruhi masikio yangu baba, wamenipiga na kuunguza nguo yangu, na kujeruhi masikio yangu baba, niko kwenye maumivu baba, baba uko wapi baba, baba uko wapi baba, baba uko wapi baba, baba yuko wapi Ali Asgar, umempeleka wapi baba, baba yuko wapi Ali Asgar, umempeleka wapi baba, ana kiu ya maji baba, baba uko wapi baba, baba uko wapi baba, baba uko wapi baba, wamenifunga ndani ya jela, kuna giza hapa baba, wamenifunga ndani ya jela, kuna giza hapa baba, baba naogopa baba, baba uko wapi baba, baba uko wapi baba, baba uko wapi baba. Muhammad wa ali Muhammad sallallahu
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم والعن أعداءهم. چھوٹی تربت پہ مادر پکاری، گھر چلو اے سکینہ پیاری، اماں جاتی وطن کو تمہاری، گھر چلو اے سکینہ پیاری، میری جان اٹھو میری جان، قبر میں ہے اندھیرا سکینہ، کس کی نظروں نے تم کو ہے کھائی، اتنی جلدی اجل تم کو آئی، صدقے تم پر ہے مادر دکھیاری، گھر چلو اے سکینہ پیاری، دل نہ اماں کا اتنا جلاؤ، غم زادی کو نہ اتنا رلاؤ، ہونا مجھ سے خفا اماں واری، گھر چلو اے سکینہ پیاری، کیسے صبر کروں اے سکینہ، اپنی بیٹی کہو کچھ سکینہ، روتی ہے تیری مادر دکھیاری، گھر چلو اے سکینہ پیاری، بی بی اصغر اگر پوچھے مجھ کو، کہنا دن رات روتی تھی تجھ کو، اب بھی نوحہ ہے اس کی زباں پر، گھر چلو اے سکینہ پیاری، بی بی الزام ماں پہ نہ دھرنا، جا کے بابا سے شکوہ نہ کرنا، میں کفن دیتی ہوتی جو چادر، گھر چلو اے سکینہ پیاری، میری جان اٹھو میری جان، قبر میں ہے اندھیرا سکینہ، لعنۃ اللہ قوم الظالمین وسيعلم الذين ظلموا ينقلبون انا لله وانا الیہ راجعون. صلوات علی محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. صل. صلوات على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجه.
سورة المباركة الفاتحة.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجه.
رحم الله من قرأ سورة المباركة الفاتحة. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله بارئ الخلائق الأجمعين، باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء، حبيب قلوبنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجه.
ثم الصلاة والسلام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين، لا سيما ولي الله الحجة ابن الحسن صاحب الأمر والزمان. اللهم صل على محمد روحي وأرواح العالمين له الفداء، ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الأولين والآخرين إلى قيام يوم الدين. صلى الله عليك يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، صلى الله عليك يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، يا رحمة الله الواسعة ويا باب نجاة الأمة. يا غريب الغرباء، يا مظلوم كربلاء، السلام على من جعل الله الشفاء في تربته، السلام على من الإجابة تحت قبته، السلام على ساكن كربلاء. فيا ليتنا ثم يا ليتنا كنا معكم سادتي، يا سادتي فنفوز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد، قال الله تعالى في محكم كتابه الحكيم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أطيعوا الله وأطيعوا الرسول وأولي الأمر منكم. صدق الله العلي العظيم وآمنا به. زينوا مجالسكم بذكر محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. A second of your loudest salawat to hasten the reappearance of Maulana Sahib al-Amri wa Zaman. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ajil farajah. Ahibai, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands us within the Holy Quran and establishes a hierarchy of authority for mankind to adhere to in order to secure eternal happiness both in the dunya as well as in the akhirah. And you know, even in matters outside of religion, lack or the absence of a hierarchy of authority necessitates to fawda, yani disruption and chaos. Life requires a hierarchy of authority through which systems are created, and within these systems, every human being's purpose is outlined, and there is a general monitoring of a movement within a certain direction in order to ensure that not only is the overall purpose achieved, but each and every individual within the process is maximizing the potential within themselves. And you find this in every aspect of life. You will find principles of management. Perhaps one of the greatest thinkers within school of management, for example, you will find that they lean towards the fact that management is not about babysitting. Management is not about babysitting people. Management is not about running a system of slavery, but management is to be able to understand people, nurture them, and allow them to bring out the potential within them. There's a hierarchy through management. You find this within the universities in the field of education, where the teacher or the professor nurtures the students, not only enlightening them and educating them, but allowing them to progress in terms of the application of their knowledge. And behind this system, you bring it down to even a micro level. At a more micro level, we say micro yani zahiran, but the meaning is azim, and perhaps the greatest, even within the nidam or the system of a family. Within the family, hierarchy of authority is not necessarily dictatorial, but the purpose of Islam putting forward the hierarchy system within a family is that the father figure, for example, the father has the role, the mother has the role, the eldest son has the role, elder brother has a role, the elder sister has a role. The idea of this hierarchy through respect and so on and so forth is that the family head allows those who are underneath his guardianship to prosper spiritually as well as materialistically. And it is based on this understanding that you see Imam Sajjad alayhi salam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ajil farajah, comes forward with this entire charter known as Risanat al-Hukuk, the Charter of Rights, in which the right of the father, the right of the children, so on and so forth, is dictated and put forward. For the idea is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala within this creation has put forward this hierarchy of authority. And when we abide by this authority, we are able to succeed and reach our maximum potential, both for the dunya as well as the akhirah. And you find that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala outlines this hierarchy in the Quran where he says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Ati'ullah. Obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Obedience towards the Lord of the universe, creator of everything within the realm of existence. Submission and obedience to him is necessary. Does it stop there? La. You find that there is a hierarchy. This hierarchy is a hierarchy that is vertical as opposed to horizontal. Authority of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala necessitates the authority of Rasulullah. For the Quran comes forward and says, Ati'ullah wa ati'ur Rasul. In the same way that obedience is required towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the same level of obedience without any distinction whatsoever is commanded by Rasulullah. Obedience towards the Prophet of Islam, the final messenger, and the full authority over the Muslims, the mu'mineen. In addition to that, does authority or the chain of command stop at Rasulullah? La. Wa ulil amri minkum. Obedience towards the ulil amr is a command from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the sense that how do you display your full obedience to a Lord that you cannot see, you cannot hear, to a Lord who is beyond the full capacity of the human mind to comprehend? This Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanding obedience or showing our obedience towards him, demonstrating obedience towards him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states for us through this verse that your obedience towards the Prophet and your obedience towards the ulil amr is a demonstration of your obedience towards me. There is no infikak, there is no distinction or separation when it comes to demonstration of obedience towards the entities within this vertical hierarchy, in the sense that there is no distinction. There cannot be a distinction between obedience towards Amirul Mu'mineen or obedience towards Allah. Obedience towards Allah Azza wa Jal cannot be achieved through disobedience towards Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salam. The verticality of this authority is to ensure there is no shirk, but even within the verticality, there are many elements of a horizontal relationship. This is a kalam for perhaps later. In any way, for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and when you refer back to the tafsir of the Quran, who is the ulil amr, you will find hadith from the amma and the khassa that state the ulil amr begins with Maulana Amirul Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ajjal. Tayyib. For as believers of the Quran, we understand that obedience towards the ulil amr, the obedience towards the a'imma is necessary, is wajib, and has been dictated and commanded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How do we execute, or what are the modes of implementation and actualization of this verse? Because the idea is that Quran as a source of guidance is a book which is to be implemented. فَإِنْتَ Habibi, when you come across this verse, Ati'ullah wa ati'ur Rasul wa ulil amri minkum, and you know from the ulil amr is the ahlulbait, and you have an obligation towards the waliyul amr of your time, how do you actualize this verse in your life? What does ati'u yani ta'ah, obedience towards the imam, mean? You find over here obedience towards the imam One degree of obedience is total submission to the Imam, which is known as taslim. The concept of taslim, submission. And you find that this concept is absolutely important when it comes to us understanding our perception in life, our perception about what is right and wrong in life. Number two, it allows us to ascend the ranks of spirituality in our connection with ahlulbait. Because we have a hadith sharif by Maulana Abil Hassan Imam Ali ibn Musa Rida salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad, where he says, Man zara al-Husayn arifan bihaqqih kana min muhaddithi Allah azza wa jal fawqa al-arsh. To paraphrase the hadith, Imam al-Rida says, the one who visits Imam al-Husayn, performs the ziyarah of Imam al-Husayn. You know, the ziyarah of Imam al-Husayn in itself has many manifestations. The first, which is the most obvious and the most powerful, is the actual physical journey to Karbala al-Muqaddas, so the ziyarah. Underneath that, there are other levels. Do you know? One understanding of ziyarah, for example, is the actual recitation, the ziyarah that you recite from wherever you may be in the world, and you direct your salutations towards Imam al-Husayn. For reciting ziyarat Ashura, for example, after your salat, from your house, wherever you are in the world, is considered to be a ziyarah of Imam al-Husayn. And there are many of those thawab that are mentioned in Kamilu Ziyarat that are applicable to you, that you achieve by doing that. The most simplest form of registering the thawab of ziyarah is that Hadith al-Sharif says, you go to the highest point of your house, be it in the balcony or whatever, you look towards the skies and 3 times you say, Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah, فَيُكْتَبْ لَهُ الزِّيَارَةِ. The Imam says, it is registered in your scroll of deeds there and then. What you are looking to seek, what humanity is looking to seek, is found in these 3 sentences. Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah, which you recite 3 times. Number 2. Number 3, Majlis Azah. Allahu Akbar. This Majlis Azah, Entum Shabab, when you take time and you make the effort to go out of your way, and every other luxury you could be enjoying at this time, and you could be at the comfort of your house, or you could not be bothered, there could be a million things you could do, but you decide to come to a place where the dhikr of Imam al-Husayn is being done. In a normal, we're putting quotation marks over here just to drive the point home. In a normal ziyarah, you go to visit the Imam, but when you come to a majlis, the Imam comes to visit you. We have this mentioned, that we mentioned this in the first night. The people who gathered together to commemorate and to revive the teachings and to revive the remembrance of Imam al-Husayn. Sayyid al-Shuhada looks at them from on top of the heavens. What you aspire for in life, and for whatever aspiration you may have, the actualization of these aspirations, there are factors that are in your control and there are factors which are not in your control. At the most simplest level, and I say this with a lot of caution, at the simplest level, factors that are not in your control for your success, whatever you are chasing in the dunya, you will fulfill it and you will gain it in a majlis Imam al-Husayn, because you have earned the attention of Sayyid al-Shuhada. Person is seeking wealth, factors beyond his control in terms of seeking wealth, the success is from here. People are looking for shafa. People are seeking for better health, for cure from diseases, from freedom from sorts of bala. Baba, this is all found in the majlis of Imam al-Hussein. Because you came to revive his dhikr. To revive his dhikr is a form of salutation, a salutation that has the connotation of loyalty and affiliation. Majlis, in essence, is a form of bay'ah. And when you give bay'ah to the Imam, know that your Imam is so generous, there is nothing you will ask that will go unturned. I've said this many times. Generally, the rule of thumb is that when you ask something in dua, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is merciful. If He knows what you are asking for is not really good for you, He will not answer your dua, but He will give you something else which you don't know is better for you 1,000,000 times over. But when it comes to Imam al-Hussein, when you ask for something, if that something is bad for you, Imam al-Hussein ensures that destiny is changed so that your dua is accepted. Salamu ala manil ijabatu tahta qubbatih. Under the qubba of Imam al-Hussein. And every majlis azah is a demonstration of the qubba of Imam al-Hussein. فحنيا لكم صلوا على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. فأحبائي, if we come back to the main body of our lecture, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put forward this chain of authority, this hierarchy for us, and obedience towards the Imam is necessary and required. For how do you actualize? How do you bring this life to verse? How do you bring this verse to life and implement it in your daily lives? Obedience towards the Imam, yani taslim. One element of obedience is absolute unconditional submission towards the Imam of your time and towards ahlulbait. This is the meaning of taslim, unconditional submission. How do we begin? What are the practical elements of unconditional submission towards the Imams? The first element of taslim is that the human being acknowledges that his knowledge, his or her knowledge and intellectual capacity is restricted when it comes to the knowledge of the Imam. My knowledge, my personal knowledge is nothing when it compares to the knowledge of the Imam. I'll give you an example. Hadith al-Sharif, which is mentioned in Kitab al-Ma'ani, where Jabir ibn Abdullah al-Ansari is with Maulana Imam al-Baqir, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ajjal faraj. Jabir ibn Abdullah al-Ansari, as you know, great companion of Rasulullah and the Amir and the Imam Hassan and the Imam al-Hussein and Imam Sajjad, and he was there in the ziyarah Arba'in until he met Imam al-Baqir. Jabir ibn Abdullah al-Ansari says, I was sitting with Imam al-Baqir and we were discussing tafsir of the Quran. And there's a certain verse of the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَئِن قُتِلْتُمْ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ أَوْ مُتْتُمْ. If you were to be killed or if your life was to be lost in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, sabilillah. Sabil is path. Allah, Allah, in the path of Allah. So they were discussing this verse. Imam al-Baqir and who? Jabir ibn Abdullah al-Ansari. Jabir is a student of the Imam. Jabir is taking ilm from the Imam. Look at what he says. فَسَأَلَهُ الْإِمَامِ. Imam al-Baqir asked Jabir. Who is asking the question? Ma'soom Imam. Yani the teacher is asking the student. Imam al-Baqir, where is he on the hierarchy of authority and where are we? Where is Jabir? The Imam asks him, Atadri ma sabilillah? Atadri ma sabilullah? Do you know what is the meaning of the path of Allah, the sabilullah? Look at Jabir's reply. And from this, we begin to understand the concept of submission, taslim. قال, Jabir says, قلت لا والله إلا أن أسمعه منك. Jabir ibn Abdullah al-Ansari says, the Imam asks him, do you know the meaning of Sabilillah? Look at Jabir's reply. Jabir says, Yabna Rasulullah, O grandson of Rasulullah, I do not know anything of the Quran except what you teach me. The answer, the jawab is absolutely jameel, because the manner in which Jabir answers the Imam shows us the state of his aqidah and the aqidah that the Shia should have. Jabir didn't come and say to the Ma'soom Imam, let me begin to hypothesize. Let me give you a hypothesis of what this verse of the Quran may mean. Jabir didn't come forward and say, let me try and use my individual intellectual analysis of what it may be, what the meaning of the Quran could be. Jabir realizes and acknowledges that there is only one single authority when it comes to tafsir of the Quran, and I can never dare to independently bring out a meaning of the Quran in the presence of a Ma'soom Imam. This is submission. How dare I give my own independent? What is my interpretation of the Quran when a Ma'soom Imam is there? And this, Ahibai, has a great impact on us today. In our day and age, do you know how many people from within our community, outside our community, in this day and age, and in the generations before us, people have gone astray because of their own independent interpretations of the Quran? They thought that intellectually they are capable enough to be an authority in tafsir of Quran, while shunning away the views of ahlulbait. The first and the most common example of this is the Wahhabiyya and the Dawa'ish. This ISIS and these Daesh people. Look at from the actions that they have performed, the bloodshed that they have caused. Muslims over the world feel ashamed to even come forward with their identity as Muslims, lest they get paintbrushed with these guys. What used to happen whenever they used to record videos of suicide bombings or so on and so forth? And we, the Shia, have been the greatest. We have been by far the single greatest victim of religious violence and oppression from the beginning of time till today. For it is also clear that we make it, so it is important we make it very clear for the world that when we talk about this, we are the victims, Baba. What did they used to do when they used to make these videos of suicide bombings and mass executions and so on and so forth? Go, and even perhaps till now you'll have it on social media or on YouTube. They come, they have a black flag behind of them. It says, La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. They recite verses of the Quran, where the verse of the Quran says, Waqatilu, and kill the kuffar in whichever land that you find them. They would recite this verse, goes out on mass scale, and sarahatan, when you open a translation of the Quran and you go to the actual verse, you find the translation is actually this, and kill them where you find them. And then you and I, we go to an interfaith event and we go and we give, I think twice, should I even give the translation of the Quran to these people or no? Why? Interpretation of this verse of the Quran was taken from other than Ali Muhammad. When those who claimed to be authorities within Islam thought that they are capable to interpret the words of Allah and bypass this hierarchy of authority, they caused chaos in the name of religion. Turned people away from religion, aslan. This verse is a verse, number one, which was revealed, and I don't want to go into the tafsir because it was not from the thing today for this particular verse, but just so that we are not left hanging, this verse you should know was a verse that was revealed in defense. Yani, when they leave their fort and they attack you and you're in a form of defense, then repel them. And number two, verses like these are always restricted in the sense that the application of this verse is not even in question unless you are in the dawla of a ma'asum imam who is leading you in war. So it is not only defensive, but its implementation is not only on a defensive scale, number one. Number two, the leadership should be under the leadership of a ma'asum imam. And even with the ma'asum imam, he may determine that, no, this is not the way to go forward. There are darajat in this. This is number one. Number two, Ahibai, understanding tafsir of Quran for you and I through the words of ahlulbait. See, to read the translation of the Quran is good. To recite the Quran is good in Arabic, even if you don't understand it. It's good. And the translation is good. But many times translations are inaccurate. Many times translations will scare you from the Quran, rather bring you close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We, the Shias of Ali Muhammad, live at a time where we need to come up with tafsir of the Quran through the words of Ahlul Bayt, through the understanding of Ahlul Bayt, such that when a person reads this translation of the Quran as per Ahlul Bayt, he starts to fall in love with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Where are tafsir of Ahlul Bayt today? Even translations with footnotes that give clarification such that a person doesn't get lost in this, trying to delve into the depth of Quran without Ahlul Bayt paves the way for a person's destruction. This is what Rasulullah said, Inni tarikun fikum al-thiqlayn, kitabullahi wa itrati ahl bayti. Quran and the itra. Number one. Number two, even for those who are within the religious fields, Ahibai, those who are delving into tafsir of the Quran, any verse of the Quran that comes in, whether it is Quran, and you know when it comes to knowledge and Ahlul Bayt, it's not only Quran, everything in life, Quran we're using as an example. But if I'm trying to understand the Quran, what do I have to do with the tafsir of Fulan and Fulan and Fulan when I have tafsir of Ahlul Bayt? Even when it comes to deen, sometimes you find within our own circles, when it comes to fada'il of Ahlul Bayt, you give them fada'il of Ahlul Bayt from Bihar, or you give them fada'il Ahlul Bayt from Kitabul Kafi, which says Qala al-Bakir, Qala al-Sadiq. When you give them fada'il of Amir al-Mu'mineen that emanate from Bakir and Sadiq, they'll say, no, these are exaggerations. Give them the same fada'il from Bukhari that is narrated by Huraira or the likes of Huraira, and they accept the fada'il. Minu, who is Bukhari and who is Abu Huraira, such that I accept fada'il from them, but when it comes to fada'il from Imam al-Bakir and Sadiq, I question it. Shufu, many times you find this is the reality within our communities. Oh, this fada'il of Amir al-Mu'mineen in Bukhari. Bukhari did a favor on us by narrating the fada'il of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Why should he have more authority and weight in credibility of a hadith than Imam al-Bakir or Sadiq or Sheikh Kulaini and Alama Majlisi, who spent their entire lives collecting hadith of Bakir and Sadiq? This is the meaning of taslim. Taking from the words of Ahlul Bayt, every field of knowledge from them. Ma'rifah and the Irfan. What do I have to do with the teachings of Irfan from Falumi and Kallumi and Fulan and Tillan when I have Sahifa Sajjadiyah of Imam Sajjad? This is lack of taslim, because I try to find paths, ways of seeking proximity towards Allah outside by bypassing that hierarchy that has been listed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the meaning of, or the first dimension of taslim. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ajjal faraja. Number two, Second element of taslim, you find this is mentioned within the Holy Quran in the 4th chapter, verse number 65, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Surah Al-Ma'idah, verse number 65, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, فَلَا وَرَبِّكَ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ حَتَّى يُحْكِمُوكَ فِيمَا شَجَرَ بَيْنَهُمْ ثُمَّ لَا يَجِدُوا فِي أَنفُسِهِمْ حَرَجًا مِمَّا قَضَيْتَ وَيُسَلِّمُوا تَسْلِيمًا. So the first element of taslim is that all your knowledge, your perception of what is right and wrong in life, you take from ahlulbait and ahlulbait only. And every other theory that comes that contradicts ahlulbait, Salamun alaikum wa rahmatullah. Ani, my shughl is ahlulbait and ahlulbait only. Number 2, this verse of the Quran says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and they shall never be true believers until and unless, Ya Rasulullah, in matters in which they have dispute, you come forward as a final judge and they accept your rulings even though it goes against their best interest. Meaning, the second level of taslim is that a person submits to the teachings of Ahlul Bayt, even if those teachings go against our own personal interests. This is the meaning of submission. Ani, I want to do something. My Imam says do something else. And I submit to the will of the Imam without hesitation. Execution of the command of the Imam is greater than fulfilling my own personal interest, ambition, or desire. This is the second level of taslim. Ma'soom Imam says, the mahar of the women of our ummah should be a certain amount. Ani, for me, I may have my own personal ambition for a mahar, but my personal ambition does not come over the teachings of Ahlul Bayt. This is the meaning of taslim. Ma'soom Imam tells me that XYZ of a profession is haram and income earned from it is haram. And I know that if I enter into these professions, these are the most profitable professions in this day and age. My money, my bottom line, my ability to succeed in the dunya and feed my family lies here. But if the Imam has told me this is haram, my personal ambition on the side, taslim to the Imam. This is the meaning of taslim. Imam says azadari is supposed to be done in a certain way. Imam commends and Imam encourages and Imam praises those who weep and wail. If I know Imam praises them and encourages them, then who am I to go out and rebuke and condemn others for the manner in which they do azadari? They say, no, this azadari gives us a bad image. You know, Imam didn't know that azadari gives people a good image or a bad image. My own inferiority complex of how Islam will be viewed, put it down. The order of the Imam is above this. This is how the religion progresses. This is how we ourselves progress. In essence, when you put these 2 points together, and these are 2 of maybe 20 different categories that come under taslim, submission to a ma'soom Imam. But when you put these 2 together, you put forward the teachings of Ahlul Bayt in everything, in terms of they are the sources of knowledge from whom you will build the perceptions of what is right and wrong in life in both matters of spirituality and matters of the dunya. And number 2, you will place their teachings, you will implement their teachings above your own personal interest. When you put these 2 dimensions together of submission, do you know what the outcome is? You become a loyalist. 100% loyalist who does not flinch, who does not waver from anything whatsoever. Submission is what protects our ummah from those who want to compromise the wilayah of Amirul Mu'mineen and dilute the faith. Outsiders will call it as being sectarian, but in the language of ahlulbait, it's about being a loyalist. You do not trade the teachings of this authority when you are absolutely convinced that this authority is the path to success. This is what is needed. And this is what distinguished the companions of Imam al-Hussein from every other companion of every other Imam. Loyalists who had the highest level of submission. Not only that they submitted to the teachings of Ahlul Bayt and they took all their teachings from Ahlul Bayt. They were at a different level of submission. Do you know what that level of submission was? The companions of Imam al-Hussein understood and felt that their life is worthless in comparison to the life of the Imam and the Ahlul Bayt. Which is why they were willing to defend and protect the Imam, even at the cost of their own lives. They understood protecting the hierarchy and protecting the authority is greater than us. Our purpose of creation is to protect this authority. Taslim, submission towards the command of the Imam. On the day of Ashura, when the Imam arranged his ranks, and if Allah Azza wa Jal gives us an opportunity, maybe outside the 12 days, we've spoken about this before, but labas to repeat this and to say this again, to discuss or have a discussion on the entire battle format on the day of Ashura. You know, Imam al-Hussein is a military commander. He's Ba'd, the son of Amir al-Mu'mineen, Haydar al-Karrar, greatest battalion the universe has ever seen and will see. And yet there are events of his legacy that are going to come forward in Alam al-Raj'ah. But just the military strategy of Imam al-Hussein in how he positioned the Khaymaga, how he restricted an enemy of 100,000 people to a certain parameter within the battlefield. Never seen in the history of military tactic or strategy, that 72 men would impose on 100,000 the parameter of a battlefield, but Imam al-Hussein managed to do it. This is things that are rarely talked about. 72 men who held back 100,000 people from the time of Fajr. I was telling one of the brothers we came across tradition in one of the maqatil that the actual time which is recorded, the actual maqtal of Imam al-Hussein, when he became shaheed, is about half an hour, 45 minutes before Salatul Maghrib on the day of Ashura. Because as soon as they beheaded Imam al-Hussein, they celebrated, and after they celebrated, the first place that they went to attack was the Khaymaga, the Mukhayyam. The Khaymaga was attacked around the time of Salatul Maghrib, which is why in the Masa'ib you hear that they ran out in the dark. And after everything settled, one of the things Sayyidah Zainab did, alayha salam, was to put the children to sleep under the open skies after everything that had happened. 72 men held back 100,000 men armed to the teeth from the time of Fajr to the time of just before Maghrib. And these were summer days, which means these are long hours you're looking at. Imam al-Hussein structured his army into 3 wings. He selected groups of men to go out in duels. They would go out in 2s and 3s, mini formats, and they would go out in multiple directions, push back the enemy, come back, regroup. And within this regrouping around the Khaymaga, he put them into 3 formats. There was a center flank and the right flank and the left flank. And after that, there was a mass attack. And after the mass attack, when a number of the companions were shaheed, Imam al-Hussein regrouped them again, sent them out in cavalries of 2s and 3s, Some of these duels, these warriors that went out in 2s and 3s, they went so deep into the battlefield, they were not able to come back. So Imam al-Hussein sent Abu al-Fadil to go rescue them, come back. There was a lot that had happened over there. Then up till the time of Salatul Dhuhr and so on and so forth. If Allah gives us an opportunity, Mufassal, it's recorded in history, in-depth detail on what Imam al-Hussein did. Every pebble in that battlefield, Imam al-Hussein had measured everything in how he would encounter this enemy. But yet you find on the day of Ashura, whenever Imam al-Hussein gave a directive or a command, you never find histories recorded even one incident where a companion went and said to the Imam, but this, but that. This has been the problem. But this, but that. In the entire history, when the Imam is given a command, when his so-called companions came and said, but this and that, this is where the issues happen. Siffin, nafsushi. Sulh Imam Hassan, nafsushi. People thought they are smarter than the Imam. In this day and age, nobody will come and tell you we're smarter than the Imam. What they do is they put a nice twist to it. They come and they tell you Imam's teachings are outdated. This was for that generation. Imam was not for a particular generation. Imam is still the day of judgment. Inni tarikun fikumul, again, thakalain, kitabullahi wa itrati. Ma in tamassaktum bihima, lan tadhillu ba'di abadan. The particle of negation, lam noon, in the word lan tadhillu, lam noon denotes negation in the present tense and the future tense. Meaning Rasulullah is telling you from 1400 years, what Sajjad and Bakir and Sadiq will tell you until the day of judgment is the path of your success. How do you have people who claim to be Shias of Ali Muhammad who come and tell you, no, the teachings of Imam al-Rida are outdated and they were for that practice? Hi, these are problems in taslim, submission, which is why hadith tells us that even upon the dhuhur of the awaited Imam, Imam will reach the city of Kufa. And there are authorities, religious authorities as well, who will go to the 12th Imam. They will look at his strategy and they will say, Yabna Rasulullah, la hajata lana feek. Say, Yabna Rasulullah. The religious authorities are people who are managing the religion in the ghaiba of the Imam. They're going to come to the 12th Imam. They're going to say, you know what, O grandson of Rasulullah, we really don't need you anymore. Thank you. People who used to say, Allahumma ajil waliyik al-faraj. Why? Problem is taslim, submission to the teachings of the Imam, even if it goes against your best interest. For Shahid, you come back and you find that the companions of Imam al-Hussein were at a different level. They were not only submitting to the teachings of the Imam, they were submitting their lives for the Imam. Not a single companion questioned the authority of the Imam or questioned the directives of the Imam. After everything the companions of Imam al-Hussein did, they still felt that they haven't done anything for Imam al-Hussein. Look at the level of loyalty they had towards the Imam. I read this last part, and it's part of the Maqtal as well. Before, it's part of the Maqtal, and after this, inshallah, we begin our Masail. Submission and loyalty. This loyalty that we are trying to nurture within ourselves towards ahlulbait and towards the teachings of ahlulbait. I want to read for you this part of the Maqtal, which is recorded during the time of Salatul Dhuhr. The battle has happened, the battle is continuing. On the day of Ashura, time of Salatul Dhuhr happens. Abu Sa'id or Abu Thumama goes and says to Imam al-Hussein, it is now the time of Salatul Dhuhr. Ulama say they came forward and they recited Salatul Khawf. In either case, the format of the Salat, it changes with Salatul Khawf. But what happened is that as Imam was reciting his Salat, Salatul Dhuhr and Asr, the Imam appointed, or two companions came forward to protect the Imam while he was reciting his Salat. One was Zuhair ibn al-Kain, And the second was Sa'ad ibn Abdullah al-Hanafi. If you remember, we talked about Sa'ad ibn Abdullah al-Hanafi either yesterday or the night before, where he said to Imam al-Hussein, if 70 times I was to be killed and then burnt alive and my ashes scattered, I would still give my life for you. This Sa'ad ibn Abdullah al-Hanafi was the second one of two people who was protecting the Imam while the Imam was reciting Salat. What happened? While the Imam was reciting his Salat, they say, for wujida, when Sa'ad ibn Abdullah stood in front of the Imam, kept getting attacked by the enemies. The Imam finished his tashahud and Sa'ad ibn Abdullah fell to the ground, taking his final breath. The Maqtal says, فَوُجِدَ فِيهِ ثَلَاثَةَ عَشَرَ سَحْمًا. Gives you an understanding of what these people were when it comes to being a loyalist. Sa'ad ibn Abdullah, when he fell to the ground, the Rawi says, we saw in him 13 arrows. He was pierced with 13 arrows. غير الضرب والطعن. We found on his body 13 arrows, and this is apart from all the wounds that he had incurred through stabs of spears and the strikes of the swords. Only three things Sa'ad ibn Abdullah al-Hanafi endured while protecting the Imam. He was struck by swords. He was pierced with spears, and he was shot at with arrows. From these three things, one thing you're able to understand, the fact that the enemies struck him with a sword and they pierced him with a spear, it shows the proximity of the enemies to how close they were to Imam al-Hussein while he was reciting Salat. Arrows, you can understand that they are shooting arrows from a distance, but the fact that they are striking Sa'ad with a sword and piercing him with spears, this is how close the Imam was reciting Salat, how close he was to the enemies while they were reciting Salat. 13 arrows, spear wounds and sword wounds. How much pain did Sa'ad ibn Abdullah al-Hanafi endure while the Imam completed his Salat? Because the Maqtal says Sa'ad fell down as soon as the Imam completed his tashahud. Meaning, over the span of 4 rak'ahs, Sa'ad took one arrow after another arrow and a sword wound and got struck with spears. But all this time, Sa'ad in his mind was saying, I cannot afford to fall down, because if I fall, the next arrow is coming to my master. So I will endure, and I will endure, and I will endure. Even if I cannot stand anymore, I will endure until the Imam finishes his Salat and is safe. Which is why the Maqtal says, as soon as the Imam completed his tashahud, at that moment, Sa'ad said, now I can fall to the ground. 13 arrows. The Rawi says we can't count غير الضرب والطعن, which means they couldn't even count the number of wounds. Sa'ad ibn Abdullah al-Hanafi, a loyalist to the extent that he said, the pain that I endure for my Imam is nothing After everything that has happened, Sa'ad falls down to the ground. Imam al-Hussein takes the head of Sa'ad and he places it on his lap. Do you know what they found Sa'ad saying? وَلَمَّا أُثْقِنَ سَعِيد بِالْجِرَاحِ. When Sa'id was overcome with injuries and the Imam finished his salat, سَقَطَ إِلَى الْأَرْضِ. Imam said, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. And Sa'ad fell down. وَهُوَ يَقُولُ. Sa'ad is saying this while he fell to the ground. Allahumma la'anhum la'na adin wa thamud. Ya Allah, chastise them in the way that you sent the punishment to Ad and Thamud. Wa abligh nabiyyaka minni as-salam. He says, Ya Allah, send my salams to Rasulullah. Wa ablighu, Ya Allah, you tell Rasulullah, ma lakitu min alamil jirah. Ya Allah, you tell Rasulullah the extent of the pain that I've endured while protecting the family of your Prophet. Imam al-Hussein takes the head of Sa'ad and he places it on the lap. Wallahi, ya Shi'at Amirul Mu'mineen, ya Shi'at Abu Abdullah, this will break your heart. After everything Sa'ad endured, do you know what he said to the Imam when the Imam took his head and placed it on the lap? The Maqtal says, وَإِلْتَفَتَ إِلَى الْإِمَامِ الْحُسَيْنِ عَلَيْهِ السَّلَامِ قَائِلًا. He asked the Imam, أَوَفَيْتُ يَا ابْنَ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ. Sa'ad asked him, Ya Imam, was I loyal enough to you? Did I fulfill my responsibility to you? At that moment, after everything he has endured, Sa'ad is still ashamed. Sa'ad is still asking, Ya Imam, this last breath that is remaining, did I do enough for you? Imam al-Hussein says to him, فَقَالَ الْإِمَامِ نَعَمْ. Of course. أَنْتَ إِمَامِ فِي الْجَنَّةِ. He said to Sa'ad ibn Abdullah al-Hanafi, you will enter Jannah, you are in Jannah before me. As soon as Sa'ad heard these final words from the Imam, the Rawi says, فَقَدَى نَحْبُهُ. His ruh left his body. What a way for the ruh to leave the body. Ahibari. Submission to ahlulbait. Being a loyalist to the teachings and the words of ahlulbait is the purpose of our existence. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Ikhwani, tonight is the night for the ashab of Imam al-Hussein. And from the ashab of Imam al-Hussein, because the theme is loyalty and the theme is submission. Masa'ib, today's Masa'ib of Abbas. Grand companion from the companions of Imam al-Hussein. And the idea is when we narrate and you hear about the stories and the heroics and the legacy of these companions of Imam al-Hussein, Ahibba'i, when you go for ziyarah and you stand at the grave of the shuhada, the sacrifices of Sa'ad and the sacrifices of Abbas come to your mind and you pay tribute to men of honor. That tribute, that ziyarah has value because you know who you're paying tribute to. And on the other hand, these companions, ya ahibba'i, you find them to be the best of role models that you and I try to seek and emulate. When you feel that following the religion is becoming too difficult, seek inspiration from Sa'ad and Abbas, and every difficulty becomes easy for you. Abbas was from the tribe of Bani Shakir. one of the most staunch companions of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. In fact, his entire tribe was a tribe of people who had the wilayah for Amir, such that Abis was fighting alongside Amir al-Mu'mineen in the Battle of Siffin. Abis, in essence, is the product of the tarbiyah of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Abis is that one person who was honored. Amir al-Mu'mineen raised him and nurtured him such that he could be from the companions of Abu Abdullah. How many of the companions of Imam al-Hussein were actually students of Amir al-Mu'mineen, who had taken their aqidah from Amir al-Mu'mineen? Which is why the poet says, Ya Aba Abdullah, Ya Aba Abdullah, how fortunate are you to have companions, and these companions were nurtured by Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. Amir al-Mu'mineen used to say in regards to Abis and the tribe of Abis, Bani Shakir, he says, لو تمت عددهم ألفا لعبد الله حق العبادة. Amir al-Mu'mineen used to say, Abis and the tribe of Abis, Bani Shakir, if there were 1,000 of them on this earth, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would have been worshipped in the way he should be worshipped. Yani the wilayah of Amir al-Mu'mineen would spread on this earth if there were 1,000 people like Abis. Abis, mountain he was in his strength, in his belief, in his loyalty. The narrations of the Maqtal mentions that after the first mass attack on the companions of Imam al-Hussein, they regrouped again together, and the Imam now put forward a strategy for people to go into single challenges, to go out in single challenges so that they could push forward the enemies even further back. And at this point, Abis came forward to Imam al-Hussein and he said to him, Yabna Rasulullah, there is nobody in this universe who is more beloved and more sacred to me than yourself. And then he says to Imam al-Hussein, وَلَوْ قَدَّرْتُ أَنْ أَدْفَعْ عَنْكَ الذَّيْمِ وَالْكِتَالِ بِشَيْءٍ أَعَزُّ مِنْ نَفْسِي وَدَمِي لَفَعَلْتُ. Abis says to Imam al-Hussein, look at the beauty in the words. Abis says to Imam al-Hussein, Ya Aba Abdullah, if I had anything more precious than my life and my soul, my blood, if I had something more precious than this, in order to defend you, I would have given that. I have nothing more than my life in your way. And then Abis recited the Shahada. He said, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah wa ashhadu anni ala hudak. Shahada Thalitha. He said, then I bear witness that I am on the path of guidance that is given by you, and on the path of guidance provided by your father, Amir al-Mu'mineen. And he said, Ya Aba Abdullah, do you give me permission to go into the battlefield? Imam al-Hussein bid Abis farewell with tears in his eyes. The narrations mention within the Maqtal that Abis went into the battlefield from the side of the Khaymaga. Allah, Ya Shabab, it is now as if you are in Karbala, Yawm al-Ashura, and you are watching from the sidelines. Abis, mentally you have this picture in front of you. Abis goes into the battlefield wearing his armor and his headgear, with brandishing his sword. He comes out towards the Maidan, and the army of Umar ibn Sa'ad have formed a semicircle around the perimeter of the battlefield. When Abis enters into the middle of the Maidan, historians say, by the way, the middle of the Maidan is where the Sahan of Imam al-Hussein is today, where the Salatul Jama'ah is recited. Abis comes into the Maidan. As he comes into the Maidan, brandishing his sword, wearing his armor and his headgear, Rabi' ibn Tamimi, who was one of the enemies, the generals within the ranks of Umar ibn Sa'ad al-La'in, cried out to the army and he said, O people of Kufa, do not come out in challenge towards Abis. Indeed, he is a lion from the lions of Kufa, and we forbid any one of you to come forward. So Abis stood in the battlefield. No one is accepting his challenge. He then cried out to Omar ibn Sa'ad and he said to him, if you and your men are weak to fight me one-on-one, then I accept and I agree that you come in groups of 3s and 4s against me and I shall still fight you on. At that time, Omar ibn Sa'ad said to, or Rabi at-Tamimi says to Omar ibn Sa'ad, "O Omar, if you send 3s and 4s against Abis, he will deplete our enemy and our ranks will shrink until we're pushed out of this battlefield." Allahu Akbar, this was Abis. So they refused to come towards him. For Omar ibn Sa'ad then cried out, "O people, if we are not able to attack him in single challenges and we are not able to attack him in groups, then let all of us gather together and throw stones upon Abis for every direction." For Omar ibn Sa'ad gave the directive. The narrations mention that thousands of people picked up stones on the battlefield and they began to pelt Abis with the stones all at one time. When Abis saw that these cowards are throwing stones towards him, what did Abis do? You would think he will retreat. You will think that he's going to use his shield. The Maktal says that when Abis saw this, he removed his armor, he removed his headgear, he threw away his shield, and with his sword, he ran towards the enemies. The Rawi says, initially we saw that he dispersed 200 people from a rank. He began to chase them. The Rawi in another Maktal says that there is not a single person who came across the sword of Abis except that he was sent to Jahannam wa bi'sal masir, until Abis got rid of 900 people from the kuffar. At that time, the Maktal says, Omar ibn Sa'ad said, we're not able, stones are not enough for us to stop Abis. Attack him from every direction with every weapon that we have within our artillery. The narrations mention that they began to attack Abis with swords. They began to attack Abis with spears. They circled him and they began to shoot arrows towards Abis from every direction. Allah, Allah, ya Shia. Abis was covered with wounds from head to toe until he fell down onto the ground. One of the people of Kufa come to Abis and they say to him, "Oh Abis, are you crazy when you know that you are outnumbered by the enemies? Why is it you threw your armor and your shield away?" Abis, who was lying down in a pool of his own blood, the narrations mention that Abis was bleeding even from his ears. He was bleeding from his mouth. As he was speaking, blood was pouring out from the mouth. Abis says to him, "Ma asab al-muhibbu fi tariqi habibihi sahlun." He says, all the pain that I endure in the path of the person that I love means nothing to me. It's easy for me. He said these in his final breath. The narration mentions that the army of Umar ibn Sa'ad, they lighted upon the chest of Abis and they began to behead him while he took his final breath. Allah, Allah. They then began to fight over the head of Abis. The Maktal mentions that Imam al-Hussein, when he saw the head of Abis being raised up on the being raised up, Imam al-Hussein began to weep and he cried out, "Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un." Allah, Allah. This is Abis who fell down to the ground and he was attacked from every direction. Ya Abis, soon is going to be the Maktal of your master, Aba Abdullah. The narrations mention Ya Shi'at al Muhammad. The narrations mention that when Aba Abdullah was alone in the Maktal, they were not able to come and fight him one-on-one. So Umar ibn Sa'ad gave a directive, attack Aba Abdullah from every direction. Some of them threw stones on Imam al-Hussein. Some of them attacked him with spears. Some of them attacked him with stones. Allah, Allah, ya Shia. Today I read in the Maktal, today in the afternoon I read in the Maktal, Umar ibn Sa'ad said, attack him with spears, arrows, stones, and swords. I read in the Maktal today, Umar ibn Sa'ad said, those of you who are able to light fire, light the fire and throw it on Abu Abdullah. The Maktal says, this is the final point. Ya Ahibai, one line of the Masa'ib. If you understand it, you understand it. Allah, the Rawi says, when they attacked Imam al-Hussein from every direction, Fakada Shilwan. The word Shilwan, do you know what it means? This is a term that is given to somebody whose every bone in the body is broken. Allah, Shilwan is a term that is given to a person because of the number of wounds from swords and spears. The skin is hanging off the bone. Ya Hussein.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
يرسمك بكائي منارة بسمائي، يرسمك بكائي منارة بسمائي، بداية دعائي حبيبي حسين، حبيبي حسين. يرسمك بكائي منارة بسمائي، يرسمك بكائي منارة بسمائي، بداية دعائي حبيبي حسين. Together
حبيبي حسين،
أحبك من قبل ما يجري بي الدم، لفاظت اسمك قبل لا أعرف أتكلم، يمر اسمك جروحي ومدمعي ومبسم، طفل آني وبغرامك أبقى أتعلم، أشوفك حياتي كتابي وصلاتي، وهبتك دمائي حبيبي حسين،
حبيبي حسين.
أنا المجنون أنا وأتباه بجنوني، فقط أهلي عشق عاقل يسموني، وغيرك ما أحب رغم اللي يعدلوني، إذا ترفض أشوفك أكره عيوني، أجيك بخضوعي وقدم دموعي، يصير انحنائي حبيبي حسين،
حبيبي حسين.
سلاطيني الزمن تتوسلي ببابك، يمن حتى الذهب يتوسل ترابك، مثل موج البحر من تزحف أحبابك، نموت نعيش لازم نوصل عتابك، طريقك نجاتي حياتي ومماتي، اجيتك فدائي حبيبي حسين،
حبيبي حسين،
وكان حبيبي حسين، انا محمل ذنوبي وجيتك اتوسل، أنا محمل ذنوبي وجيتك أتوسل، إذا ضيق باب غيرك أدري ما تقبل، أنا بلياك ضايع كل شي ما أندل، أنا بلياك ضايع كل شي ما أندل، يا أوسع صدر ومن جالك يدلل، يا شوقي وغرامي صحوتي ومنامي صباحي ومسائي
حبيبي حسين، حبيبي حسين،
يا أوسع من خيالي وأبعد وأبعد، يا أوسع من خيالي وأبعد وأبعد، عجيبة محبتك كل لحظة تجدد، فتح باب القلب مرة وعليك ينسد، بعد ممنوع يدخل بالقلب أحد، كلام النهاية يعشق البداية، أوضح وفائي
حبيبي حسين، حبيبي حسين،
رسمك بكائي منارة بسمائي، رسمك بكائي منارة بسمائي، بداية دعائي
حبيبي حسين، حبيبي حسين، يا حسين 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 حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين حسين يا حسين حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا तेरी वफाओं की अजब गाज़ी कहानी है, तेरी वफाओं की अजब गाज़ी कहानी है, तेरी वफाओं की عجب غازی کہانی ہے تیری وفاؤں کی عجب غازی کہانی ہے تیری وفاؤں کی عجب غازی کہانی ہے تیری وفاؤں کی عجب غازی کہانی بچپن پہ سکینہ کے فدا کرتی جوانی ہے تیری وفاؤں کی عجب غازی کہانی ہے تیری وفاؤں کی عجب غازی کہانی بچپن پہ سکینہ سے فدا کرتی جوانی ہے تیری وفاؤں کی عجب غازی کہانی 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 وہ طوفان زہرا کی دعاؤں کا سلا ہے عباس تیرا نام ہی زینب کی رضا ہے اب تک تیرا ممنون ہے اسلام کا بانی ہے تیری وفاؤں کی عجب غازی کہانی ہے تیری وفاؤں کی عجب غازی کہانی وہ بچپن پہ سکینہ سے فدا کرتی جوانی ہے تیری وفاؤں کی عجب غازی کہانی ہے تیری وفاؤں کی عجب غازی کہانی وہ طوفان زہرا کی دعاؤں کا صلہ ہے عباس تیرا نام دی زینب کی رضا ہے تیرا ممنون ہے اسلام کا بانی ہے تیری وفاؤں کی عجب غازی کہانی ہے تیری وفاؤں کی عجب غازی کہانی ہے تیری وفاؤں کی عجب غازی کہانی او زہرا کی لغت کانپی حیدر میں نجف چھوڑا رو رو کے یہ شام بولے گی میری کمر کو بھی توڑا جب خون میں تر دیکھی غازی کی پیشانی ہے تیری وفاؤں کی عجب غازی کہانی ہے تیری وفاؤں کی عجب غازی کہانی وہ بچپن پہ سکینہ سے فدا کرتی جوانی ہے تیری وفاؤں کی عجب غازی کہانی ہے تیری وفاؤں کی عجب غازی کہانی او زہرا کی لغت کانپی حیدر میں نجف چھوڑا رو رو کے یہ شام بولے گی میری کمر کو بھی توڑا تو جب خون میں تر دیکھی غازی کی پیشانی ہے تیری وفاؤں کی عجب غازی کہانی ہے تیری وفاؤں کی عجب غازی کہانی وہ بچپن پہ سکینہ کے فدا کرتی جوانی ہے تیری وفاؤں کی عجب غازی کہانی ہے تیری وفاؤں کی عجب غازی کہانی اب کون بچائے گا میرے سر کی رضا غازی وہ کس طرح سے اب جاؤں گی میں شام بتا غازی سر کہتی تھی یہ زہرا یہ ثانی ہے تیری وفاؤں کی عجب غازی کہانی ہے تیری وفاؤں کی عجب غازی کہانی وہ بچپن پہ سکینہ کے فدا کرتی جوانی ہے تیری وفاؤں کی عجب غازی کہانی ہے تیری وفاؤں کی عجب غازی کہانی تیرے ننگے پھوپیاں ماں وعدے ویکھے عابد نے 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 آئے شام بلے خون منظر کی ویکھے عابد نے تیرے ننگے پھوپیاں ماں وعدے ویکھے عابد نے تیرے ننگے پھوپیاں ماں وعدے ویکھے عابد نے آئے شام بلے خون منظر کی ویکھے عابد نے پھوپیاں ماں وعدے ویکھے عابد نے تیرے ننگے پھوپیاں ماں وعدے ویکھے عابد نے تیرے ننگے پھوپیاں ماں وعدے ویکھے عابد نے تیرے سنگت در کے لاشیں نہ گئیا بیمار کی جانے کی بے دفنے گویا ہائے شام تری دودھ کا تلقی ویکھے عابد نے تیرے ننگے پھوپیاں ماں وعدے ویکھے عابد نے تیرے ننگے پھوپیاں ماں وعدے ویکھے عابد نے تیرے ننگے پھوپیاں ماں وعدے ویکھے عابد نے تیرے سنگت در کے لاشیں نہ گئیا بیمار کی جانے کی بے دفنے گویا ہائے شام تری یود کا تلقیب ویکھے عابد نے تیرے ننگے پھوپیاں ماں وعدے ویکھے عابد نے تیرے ننگے پھوپیاں ماں وعدے ویکھے عابد نے تیرے ننگے عابد نے آئے شام بلے خون منظر کی بے کے عابد نے زیر ننگے خوبیا ماوادے بے کے عابد نے زیر ننگے خوبیا ماوادے بے کے عابد نے چل تو کرتے باری بیمار دے کریا تک شام نو اٹھیا آیا لو دیا جنیا بچ بازار آدے ہس دے شامی کی بے کے عابد نے ننگے خوبیا ماوا دے بے کے عابد نے تیرے ننگے خوبیا ماوا دے بے کے عابد نے تیرے ننگے خوبیا ماوا دے بے کے عابد گال تو کتباری بیمار دے کریا تکو شام نے اکیا تایا لو دیا دریا بچ بازار آدے حضرت شامی کی بے کے عابد نے تیرے ننگے خوبیا ماوا دے بے کے عابد نے تیرے ننگے خوبیا ماوا دے بے کے عابد نے آئے شام بلے نون منظر کی بے کے عابد نے تیرے ننگے خوبیا ماوا دے بے کے عابد نے تیرے ننگے خوبیا ماوا دے بے کے عابد تیری قید بکری نارو سکینہ تو خاطر تے سونا بھائی بابا ہائے صبر تلے میں میری کی بے کے عابد نے تیرے ننگے خوبیا ماوا دے بے کے عابد نے تیرے ننگے خوبیا ماوا دے بے کے عابد نے تیرے ننگے خوبیا ماوا دے بے کے عابد نے شبیر ہمیں آبی صدا دیتا ہے خون 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 شبیر ہمیں آبی صدا دیتا ہے ماتمی ہاتھ اٹھانے کی ماتمی ہاتھ اٹھانے کی دعا دیتا ہے خون شبیر ہمیں آبی صدا 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 دیتا ہے سچے الفاظ ہے کیا رے صداقت کیا ہے یہ بتاتا ہے ہمیں حسن شہادت کیا ہے اب کہتے ہیں کسے اور عبادت کیا ہے یہ تو بیٹیوں کو توحید سکھا دیتا ہے خون شبیر ہمیں آبی صدا دیتا ہے خون شبیر شبیر ہمیں اپنی صدا دیتا ہے کون شبیر ہمیں اپنی صدا دیتا ہے کون شبیر ہمیں اپنی صدا دیتا ہے افکار یزیدی کو مٹھانے کے لیے پرچم حضرت عباس اٹھانے کے لیے دین اسلام کی توقیر بچانے کے لیے جذبہ شوق شہادت کو بڑھا دیتا ہے دین شبیر ہمیں اپنی صدا دیتا ہے دین شبیر ہمیں اپنی صدا دیتا ہے دین شبیر ہمیں اپنی صدا دیتا ہے ماتمی ہاتھ اٹھانے کی ماتمی ہاتھ اٹھانے کی دعا دیتا ہے کون شبیر ہمیں اپنی صدا دیتا ہے کون شبیر ہمیں اپنی صدا دیتا ہے ذکر شبیر کی عظمت کا حوالہ بن کر دین احمد کا زمانے میں سہارا بن کر پیر بختوں کے مقدر کا اجالا بن کر آتش عشق حسینی کو ہوا دیتا ہے کون شبیر ہمیں اپنی صدا 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 دیتا ہے دل پہ جب ہونے لگا عشق حسینی کا سر ہرنت کر لیا ایک رات میں صدیوں کا سفر اس کو دنیا میں ملی اس کی شفاعت کی خبر عشق شبیر ہے منزل کا پتا دیتا ہے کون شبیر ہمیں اپنی صدا 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 دیتا ہے یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین عشق زینب یا زینب یا زینب یا زینب یا زینب یا زینب عشق حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا عشق عباس یا الفاظ آب الفاظ آب الفاظ آب الفاظ آب الفاظ عشق سجاد یا سجاد یا سجاد یا سجاد یا سجاد یا سجاد عشق رقیہ 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 عشق زہرا یا زہرا یا زہرا یا زہرا یا زہرا یا زہرا عشق حیدر یا حیدر یا حیدر یا حیدر یا حیدر یا حیدر یا حیدر عشق مہدی یا مہدی یا
محمد وآل محمد صلوات. اللهم صل على محمد.
السلام عليك يا رسول الله. السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين. السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. السلام عليكم يا علي بن الحسين الزين العابدين. السلام عليكم يا محمد بن علي الباقر. السلام عليكم يا جعفر بن محمد الصادق. السلام عليكم يا موسى بن جعفر الكاظم. السلام عليكم يا علي بن موسى الرضا. السلام عليكم يا محمد بن علي الجواد. السلام عليكم يا محمد بن علي الجواد. السلام عليكم يا علي بن محمد الهادي. السلام عليكم يا حسن بن علي صاحب العسكري. السلام عليك يا صاحب الزمان. السلام عليكم يا شريك القرآن وكابة الإيمان وإمامنا وإمام الإنس والجان. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
حسينيات حسينيات يزيديات يزيديات نعم
He didn't want to do
Whatever works for you.